Hey everyone, we're here with Jeff Gothelf, and we're going to talk a little bit more about his most recent book, Forever Employable, as well as some of the concepts he's been writing about for years with Sense and Respond Press. Jeff, thank you for spending some time with us.
My pleasure, Kit. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to ask a question. What does it mean to be forever employable? What does that actually, what does that term mean at its core?
Yeah, so here's what I mean by it, right? Everybody can interpret it any way they like, but and I'll show it to you because currently it's the only copy of the book that exists at the moment. But
Okay.
2 weeks, everyone can have one. But to me, it's the subtitle of the book. So uh, it's how to stop looking for work and let your next job find you. To me, that is being forever employable. It's that sense of comfort that your next opportunity is going to find you. That if your company is reorganizing and you're panicking and rewriting your resume and submitting it to jobs, that you don't have to do that, at least not with that sense of panic. That there is always going to be a situation where you are in demand and have people looking for you or for the thing that you do and then finding you in the process. And to me, there's a massive just health benefit here, mental health benefit, which of course translates into physical health as well, where that level of stress is just significantly lower, right? And you've created this platform around yourself where kind of everybody who knows or everybody who needs to find out what you know, what you do, what problems you help solve, what you're good at, can easily figure that out and decide whether or not to contact you.
Is that now? I guess one question is that really only available to people who have niche skill sets? Is it something that everyone can do? I mean, go into a little bit more about how someone needs to kind of focus on what they become good at in order to become forever employable, because certainly there must be skills that don't fall into that category.
So I don't believe that this is a niche proposition. I think that, look, I wrote the book primarily for mid-career knowledge workers. So really anybody who's doing any kind of office work and is 5 to 15 years into their job, right? Roughly speaking, that's roughly it. Um, and so that means that if you've been doing marketing for 15 years, you can build a forever employable platform for yourself. Doesn't matter what kind of marketing. Yes, you'll need to identify a set of expertise and maybe a unique slice of marketing that positions you as the expert in healthcare marketing, in real estate marketing, in influencer marketing for recreational vehicles. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, certainly. But I don't believe that it limits the opportunity to a specific niche profession. In fact, I would double down and say that this is probably open to the overwhelming majority of professions. Let's say you're a plumber, right? There's nothing stopping you from creating a platform where you share your expertise about being a plumber. Now, maybe it's about bathroom installation. Maybe it's about washer and dryer repair. I don't know, right? But the point is that there's no reason why creating that kind of platform for yourself then doesn't yield the kind of return that a knowledge worker would see, or anybody. And I talk about that in the book. We give examples
Hmm.
about like cake makers and things like that, right? Chefs,
Sure.
people who have done this, who have been able to translate their core skills into a platform that then drives inbound leads.
Got it. And so, I mean, do you see the Forever Employable platform as being one of mostly content production? Is sharing expertise through content, whether it's video, written articles, things like that? I mean, is it educating in that sense?
Yes, it's teaching.
Yeah.
Yes, to be very, very specific, it's teaching. But teaching takes time and it takes expertise and it takes experience. You start with storytelling
Mm.
and you build your way up to teaching. storytelling is teaching. It's just a much, it's to the MVP of it.
Right.
Right. So if you want, you can write 500 words or 750 words or give a 20-minute talk rather than build an 8-week course or even a 4-hour course. Right. So start with storytelling. And this is the thing that always gets people, because the first question that comes up whenever I talk about storytelling is they'll say something like, I don't know what to talk about. Right. Everything's been said about everything. And I get it. It's easy to feel that way. And it's probably true, right? Almost everything has been said about everything on the internet. Okay, right? But get this. No one has told your story. No one, right? Because no one has your story. No one knows your story. No one took the exact same steps to get where you are today, right? You did it. And you had experiences along the way that defined your career, your expertise, your experience, who you are, that type of thing. Share that stuff. People want to hear that. People want to understand that they weren't the only ones who didn't do well in college, but then took on a knowledge management career, a knowledge worker career, and did really well, right? People want to hear that you took that gap year, right? And backpacked through Thailand, right? And Cambodia and whatever. And what you learned that makes you a better product manager today, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look, I love this part because I get to tell my stories when I do this, right? I spent 6 months in the circus.
Okay, that's a good story, though. I mean,
right?
Not everybody's got that story.
No one's got that story. No one's got it. I have that story, right? And that's my first job out of college. I spent 6 months on the road with a circus traveling I-95, from Virginia to New Hampshire and back, basically. And I got off before it got to Atlanta and Florida, but that took 6 months to do that. Now, I learned a ton in those miserable 6 months, right? They were pretty freaking miserable, right? But I take that experience and I channel it into stories today, still today, and that was 25 years ago, to be clear, and I learned a ton about myself. It made me better at what I do today. It made me more confident, right? And so that's the thing. So you start telling your story. No one has that story. And the more that you do that, you find the pieces that A, resonate, and B, are more relevant and are better at sort of amplifying your core point, right? The core thing you really want to talk about right now. And that to me is super powerful and a great place to start.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think this is probably a good spot to segue into what you've built your Forever Employable platform on, which is really UX, especially with tech products, design thinking, and kind of really viewing that as a holistic experience that is not just a complement to product strategy, but is kind of fundamental to it. So I would love to start with that point. Can you share a little bit more about your thoughts on UX and how it pertains to product strategy?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things I've joked about for years now is how to attract traffic to a blog post or a presentation. And one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I don't use it very often. I don't deploy this tool because it's exhausting after a while, and like it's the boy who cried wolf after a while. But every now and again, like once every few years, right? If you want to really drive traffic to something, and this comes back to your question, I promise, is you declare something dead.
Yeah, of
right?
course. The clickbait,
right? Or that it's the thing doesn't exist, right? Like there's no. And so one of the most successful blog posts and ultimately talks that I ever gave was a talk called "There's No Such Thing as UX Strategy." Right. And oh my God, people were furious. They're so angry. I mean, there's several books on the topic, literally called UX Strategy. In fact, I think it's on my shelf over here. I know the author. I consider her an acquaintance. There's a whole industry conferences and workshops around UX strategy, and the guy who runs that hates me for writing that post, right? But nevertheless, right? The point that I was trying to make, and this comes back to your question. So declare something dead, drive traffic to your story. But the point I was trying to make, and there's no such thing as UX strategy, is that I believe product strategy is holistic. I don't believe that you can articulate a product strategy without a UX strategy, right? Without a business model, without a business strategy, right? Without a marketing strategy, right? To me, that's product strategy. So to me, the umbrella term is product strategy. UX, the user experience of that product is all encompassing, right? It's not just the design or the interaction design or the visual design or the copywriting, right? It's all of those things, plus the performance, plus the security, plus the privacy, plus the interoperability or the connectivity or whatever it is that your thing does, right? And so as you think about product strategy, as you think about the user experience you'd like to create, that's part of the product strategy. We'd like this to be a tool that's as simple to use as I don't know, as an iPhone, right? We'd like this to be something that is actually even simpler than an iPhone, because our target audience is retirees, right? Whatever it is, right? There's no way to carve out these slices and be the person who's like, I own UX strategy. Like I don't see it as a thing. I'm responsible for the presentation layer and kind of the interaction design, visual design, and copywriting. Absolutely, there's a person in charge of that. But to then carve out that person and say, well, I am the UX strategist. Like, okay. I don't know. To me, that it's an artificial land grab, ultimately, right? It's a massive part of it, but product strategy to me is the umbrella term.
Yeah, and I think maybe that comes to kind of trade-off decisions in usability, right? So, I think this might be a problem that a lot of B2B companies face, where they're making the trade-off between the buyer's needs and the user's needs. And ultimately the buyer doesn't care if it's a terrible UX as long as it checks the RFP box. And you've got users who are like, this is terrible, I can't use this. So how do you make, I guess that's a kind of a piece of UX strategy and how that might formulate into product strategies, making those trade-offs. Do you see kind of like a common pattern when it comes to different approaches to UX strategy in the bigger context of product strategy from that lens?
I see most organizations like that sell B to B to C kind of products stop at the second B, right? That's roughly what I see. So it's kind of echoing what you said. I think that there are always people in that organization, usually the UX people, and certainly most of the product people, who will make the leap to the C, right? They go to B to B to C, but their decisions are often overruled by folks doing the B2B prioritization and stopping at thinking of the next thing, and that is, to me, that is it's unacceptable. Like, it's funny. I was talking to. I forget who I was talking to, but we were debating the difference between business. They're like, it was like business needs and customer needs, right? And the difference being, I think, is that if your organization has this concept of prioritizing business needs over customer needs, if that's a conversation you're having at work, then in all likelihood, the experience that you're creating for your customers or your users is not benefiting them, right? You're doing something in that user experience that is likely not beneficial to the customer or the user for the purpose of benefiting the business. So, for example, you're collecting useless personal information that you're then going to use for marketing.
Right.
That's an example of that, right? Like, why are we asking all these questions, right? We don't need it. They don't need it. They don't need to provide it. Well, we sell that list to other people and we make money off of that, right? That's prioritizing business needs over customer needs. And so it's super important to be aware of that.
Yeah, and this segues into one of the questions I wanted to ask you as well. I think from a business organization perspective, there are fundamental beliefs you have to have in order to take a customer centric approach, and really it's more of a bottom up type value creation process where you start with the customer and you build up into a business that monetizes that value, versus starting from the business and kind of serving the business first and customers second. And I think that maybe is where I want to ask you about, have you seen companies that don't have that fundamental belief that the customer comes first take any form of design thinking or discovery or any UX strategy in general? Have they taken that seriously? Or is that more of a fundamental, incongruency between those beliefs? Mishap here.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's good. It makes it real.
Yeah, we're live. That's action.
That's how you know it's live and we're not bots.
Exactly.
Which is good. Look, this is the eternal struggle, right? This is the I've grown disillusioned with this debate. And I've grown disillusioned primarily because for far, far too long, the UX community, the design community, has taken this victim mentality to this debate, right? We don't have a seat at the table. No one listens to us. Like, they hire us and pay us to do this work, but then they don't implement it. And at a certain point, there is legitimacy to those concerns. And at a certain point, enough. Shut up or do something about it, right? And that's really how I see it today. I think that there are the skill sets of a modern UX designer, any kind of designer, is robust enough and should be robust enough that along with a good product manager, they can put together the kinds of arguments that make compelling, data-driven, evidence-based cases for doing great work, great design work, great user experience work, great software engineering work, and prioritizing the things that make a difference to customers. We've got the tools, we've got the methodologies, they're not expensive, they're fast, they're cheap, they're easy to do, right? The lean startup is on the desk of every single one of your executives. Thank you, Eric Ries, for selling 2 million books or whatever it is, right? That alone should open up the conversation. And if you keep banging your head against the wall inside your organization and you keep making these evidence-based, data-driven, respectful cases for doing great work and you keep getting shut down, go work somewhere else. Now, I recognize that in the time of the pandemic and the COVID, maybe that's easier said than done, right? It's a lot of uncertainty right now. But generally speaking, when it comes to product design and engineering, it's a seller's market. There's just not usually there are a ton of jobs and not enough people to fill them. And so if you continue to find yourself in a situation where you're like, look, you're making those respectful, evidence-based cases for doing great work and you keep getting smacked down, fine, I'm out of here. Good, I'll go somewhere where I can do this. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. And if you build that platform for yourself, if you tell those stories, right, as they're happening, which is how I built the Lean UX platform. Right. Before I wrote the book, right, I was talking about the challenges of Agile and UX and what we were doing to try to overcome it, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? So that when I needed my next gig, it found me. So as you're going through this stuff, talk about these evidence-based, right, cases that you're making for doing great work and the challenges that you're facing. You can scrub the names out, you can anonymize it if you need to, but when you're ready to go, when you've had enough, there's already a foundation there, and people are probably already reaching out to you to at least talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again for your time today. This has been really good, and I know that the community appreciates it a lot.
My pleasure, Ken. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.